How's everyone doing? Seeing some thumbs and some smiles. So nice to have you all here. So we're gonna jump right in because we have a ton of questions that were submitted. Thank you to everyone who submitted their questions beforehand. It really helps us prepare and make sure the right folks are on the call to answer those for you. We normally like to go through and do introductions for all the folks on the call, but there's so many of you today that I don't think we're going to have a chance. So we really encourage you to join Discord and make some friends there. The Flow ecosystem and community is a really, really friendly group of folks. So don't be a stranger, jump in and reach out to any of us. But the folks on the Flow team, we'll raise our hands quick and give an introduction so you know who you're looking for. Hi, I'm Lane. I'm the product lead for Flow. We also have Megan on the call. Megan, you want to say a quick hi?
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all here. Sorry, I'm just trying to coordinate some.
Hey, I'm Peter. Pete on Discord, an engineer on the team. I see a lot of familiar faces, and great to see everybody else.
And James?
Hey, I'm James.
I'm going to be listening to something, but I'm listening to you too. I'm going to unplug my mic though for a little bit. I'm going to be listening to you, but listening to something else. I'm going to unplug my mic for a sec.
Sounds good. Sorry, go ahead, James.
I'm James. I'm KVVG on Discord. I'm responsible for most of the JavaScript stuff and wallet integration stuff. They have anything that's like FCL sort of related.
And Mackenzie? Yeah, Mackenzie, you want to say hi?
Hey, sorry. How's it going, everyone? My name is Mackenzie. I'm working on the doc site, and happy to see everyone here. This is crazy. Tons of people ready to answer some questions and hear from you guys.
Awesome. Lots of friendly faces indeed. So for folks who are new to the Flow ecosystem, I'm just going to give a really quick introduction. And then we're going to take a pretty good chunk of time to answer questions about building on Flow and how to get started. That was a huge chunk of interest from y'all. So we'll make sure we get those answered for you. We're also going to take some time to talk about developer programs and incentives for building on Flow and what sort of financial compensation is available for folks who are trying to build things in the ecosystem. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about the Flow token, projects that are upcoming, and if we have some time at the end, we'll go through architecture and performance questions that folks have been raising. And then, as always, please feel free to jump in with questions. If we can't get to them, we'll just include your email and feel free to DM your email to Megan if you don't want to share it in the public chat here, and we'll make sure we follow up with an answer if we can't get to it here. So with that said, welcome to Flow. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining an ecosystem of folks who are really excited about building the future of digital. Flow is a blockchain designed for supporting the masses in their endeavors to experience the joys of digital ownership and digital agency. Flow is a blockchain designed from the ground up to be re-architected to handle the kinds of throughput that we expect for consumer application load. It was built as the result of the CryptoKitties sort of phenomenon in late 2017 when we launched CryptoKitties on Ethereum. We had some really, really significant scaling and development complexity problems that we didn't want other folks building in the space to have to face. It's been a 3-year endeavor, but we now have a mainnet live and folks are shipping on it and building on it. NBA Top Shot is a very notable project that exists there today that I'm sure many of you have heard about. And we're excited to see everything that y'all are thinking up and seeing it live in the ecosystem. So the other important thing to know about Flow is that it has its own programming language called Cadence, which really makes native the idea of ownership and what it means to manage and program with value. That was something that we felt was really important for folks who were writing smart contracts for the first time. Blockchains handle data and value in a way that is native to their very essence and core. And we wanted the programming language to reflect that and make it really easy for you to safely program with value for your users. And we're excited to share all of that with you today. So that's Flow, and we're all really excited to have you here. So without further ado, for the folks who are interested in sort of getting started and where to get started, Peter, do you want to jump in and give us a little bit of an overview of where to get started if you have very little experience building on a blockchain or in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best thing you can do right now is join our Discord and join our forum. And you'll see there, especially on the forum, there are teams, there are sort of connections being made between technically minded people like engineers who want to build on Flow, and then people with ideas. I've seen like firsthand a lot of cool conversations talking about products and talking about the things that blockchain can enable. I would encourage anybody who has ideas, has thoughts, or is just curious, but doesn't necessarily have a technical background to go to the forum, introduce yourself. Maybe if you have an idea and you're willing to share it, or even just bits of it, post about it, and kind of, I think if we can all gather there, then those ideas, those matches will start to be made, if that makes sense. Just because I'm already seeing it happening. In addition to that, like if you post there, like we can make a point of going in and like I look at all those forum posts. I'm happy to speak to, like, if you're somebody who wants to potentially bring on technical people, but you don't really know what kinds of skills you need to hire for or who you need to talk to. I'm happy to talk about, oh yeah, like you want to do that, you'll probably need front end for that, or this is the kind of skill set you should be looking for. That's definitely something that we can help out with. But yeah, I think like I'm hopeful that there are enough people on, I don't want to say both sides, but like I think engineers and non-engineers and anyone who's interested about building has a place here, and I hope we can all kind of like make those connections, if that makes sense.
Awesome. And we also got a lot of questions from folks who maybe aren't just getting started, but are thinking about how to integrate or port over their experience from something that's already existing and maybe already has a secondary market. So what's important for folks to understand if they're thinking about porting an experience over or expanding it to Flow? Peter, do you want to jump in on that one too, or James, maybe?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, James.
Yeah, so having an understanding of like cadence and resource-oriented programming and those sort of concepts will go a long way. The fact that you don't need an NFT and Flow to kind of like represent ownership or those sorts of things could go really far. NFTs are more for like the market or something you want somebody else to have, but you can represent a lot of things as a resource internally into your application. So seeing where those sorts of models lie and like the permissions and the capability structures inside of Cadence lie and how they can overlap with your already existing application could go a long ways and introduce certain concepts into the application, which then you can expand on. It's probably how I would look at it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think it's also a little bit, it depends on your application, but I don't think that an application has to be fully blockchain or fully not blockchain. I think you can test things out. You can say, okay, let's add this new feature. Like say you have an application. I mean, we call them like Web 2 apps, right? Where blockchain is Web 3. But if you have an application where you have users and you have features and you have stuff you want to add, I think you can treat blockchain as kind of just being another feature, right? And you can see if it makes sense to your users. You can introduce it slowly. You don't need to like fully pivot your entire product to be blockchain based. And we're seeing teams doing that, right? Like NFT art is a huge topic right now, and there are like established products and businesses and communities around art, and they're like, okay, how can we see if blockchain makes sense? And that comes down to like, well, maybe when we sell a piece of art like we would normally, we take that art, we package it up, we ship it to the person. Maybe we give them an NFT as well, right? Instead of saying, okay, we're no longer shipping art, we're no longer selling art. It's like, how can we kind of test it out? And I think, yeah, like that's something. I just don't think you have to go all in, if you know what I mean. You can try it out and see what your users like.
Hey everybody, it's Brian. I'm a business partner at Dapper. One other cool thing about Dapper that is different, that's something to keep in mind. So we use a more of a private ownership model. So on Ethereum, when you build an NFT, within that NFT is kind of the whole list of all the owners. So within the decentralized network, kind of the list of ownership is centralized, versus on Flow, it's more like based on real life. So if you own an NFT, it'll be in your wallet. And so it's sort of a different paradigm, different sort of way of thinking about how the blockchain network works.
Indeed. We have a question here on the side about how leverageable is what's existing in the ecosystem for folks to reapply. And that's a really great question. So to sort of understand the stack that you're dealing with when you're building on a blockchain, there's of course, your back end and your front end and the core smart contracts, the parts that are really reusable and that all the projects in the ecosystem of open sourced are the smart contracts. And there's a member of the community here, Nick, who is with the Decentology team, and they think a lot about how to really make smart contracts something easy and reusable for folks to leverage. Nick, did you want to share anything about sort of what you're doing in that area for making components reusable? Sorry to put you on the spot, but you're right in my purview, and you're perfect to answer this question.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Kalyani. I'm with Decentology, and we make a platform called Adapt Starter. And our goal is to onboard the first sort of 10 million developers on blockchain. And so with Flow, what we are specifically doing is componentizing things and also handling all the orchestration. So as a developer, you can get to doing the serious stuff of building great apps. So we handle all the orchestration of the emulator, test accounts, etc. And what we are working toward right now is taking a lot of Flow things and making them code and making them into modules that can run on the blockchain that you can then use in order to be able to compose your smart contracts versus rewriting code again and again and again. And the one thing that we're very excited about is we are working on an NFT specific version, which would have been out actually this week, but we've run into some challenges with Cadence, but we should have it out next week. That will allow you to really express NFTs in its full glory, like art, creativity, photos, media, etc. So please reach out. I'm on Discord as Tech Bubble.
Would you mind just adding it to the sidebar there so they can reach you? And yeah, Decentology is a really great team doing great stuff in the space. So if there's a smart contract that's not already open source for you to work off of, their modules make it really easy to adapt and issue your own smart contracts for things like minting NFTs. Another reusable component that exists in the ecosystem that's important to understand is what we call the Flow client library. It's sort of the bridge that connects dApps to wallets and makes it seamless for users to move their identity around between different experiences. James is actually the creator of Flow Client Library, so he can tell us a little bit about what you can use there and what it makes possible.
Yeah, so as an application, we think it's really important that you shouldn't have to deal with like private keys and things like that. And also your users shouldn't have to deal with that sort of stuff either, unless they want to, of course. So the idea is the people that are good at dealing with the keys are the ones that should have the keys. And that's sort of like the wallets in the blockchain world. That's sort of the wallet's job to do. So the keys should never leave the wallet. And instead, what FCL does is it tries to send the transactions to the wallet for the wallet to sign. There's some stuff in there for discovery as well. So as you're building your application up, if you can make your application work with one of the wallets, the dev wallet, there will be a new dev wallet coming really soon, actually. And if you can make it work with one of the wallets, you'll be able to make it work with every wallet, and you won't even have to really do anything. It'll be like just pointed at the discovery mechanism, and you'll get access to all the different wallets and the users that come with those wallets. Or yeah. We've started exploring concepts to kind of layer FCL kind of, there's two kind of pieces to it. There's sort of like the SDK, JS SDK. And when we were doing the JS SDK, we were looking at kind of trying to figure out what the operators were in terms of talking and interacting with the chain. So we used it as like a discovery mechanism to find the smallest pieces that we could use to kind of construct interactions with the chain. And then FCL is more about, okay, now that we can construct these things, what are the pieces that are missing or needed, and how can we sort of route things to those so we can get back responses or just get values back, with the hopes in the future that we can add in more additional services, so more plug and play kind of concepts like profiles and notifications and things like that. So when you build with FCL, you get identity, you get notifications and things like that in the future. We have the wallets working right now, like MVP of the wallets. As a foundation, that should get most of the way there. The plans are those same patterns to be then transferred over to things like Unity and iOS and things like that. So your users are getting access to those ecosystems as well, but that's a ways away yet, but should technically work with the way we've done it.
And that's actually also exactly what enables access to the Dapper payments ecosystem. So quite a few folks on the right, they're asking, how do I get access to the same payment onboarding that NBA Top Shot has? And right now, Dapper Wallet is specifically serving NBA Top Shot because of the incredible success that we've seen there. But it's absolutely a flow that is one that we're seeing great success with for onboarding new folks to the ecosystem. And so the Dapper wallet will eventually be compliant with the Flow client library that James is describing. And so if as a DApp you integrate with the Flow client library, you will by default eventually also have access to the Dapper wallet onboarding experience. And that is a little ways out, but we're definitely designing the ecosystem to have general components and standards that are easy to interact with and that will enable access to broader ecosystems as options are available. And so if you're using FCL as your login solution, to maybe orient everybody in the stack, because we've been saying a lot of things, there's sort of Flow client library at the level of managing user interaction, and that's the standard that we put out for folks to manage their wallets, and for dApps to manage user interaction with wallets. Sort of the layer below that is what exactly are those users doing on the blockchain. And that's the level at which you want to understand smart contracts and how your smart contracts are going to interact with the product. And so Decentology, that team is definitely thinking a lot about how to make smart contracts these reusable components, learning more about Cadence, which is the language smart contracts are written in, and the tools available for developing in Cadence, which the Decentology team both makes accessible to use, as does a lot of the existing documentation in the Flow ecosystem. There's something called the kitty items example, which maybe Peter wants to share a little bit more about, that kind of ties these components together and makes it really easy to get your bearings for how to compose an entire application here. Do you want to walk us through kitty items a little bit, Peter, maybe?
I'd love to. So yeah, Lane alluded to this, but the Flow team, we built Flow and we helped the team that was building NBA Top Shot to build on Flow, and we were kind of doing that at the same time. So it's sort of like we were both sprinting side by side, and the result of that was we learned a lot about how different usage patterns and how dApps could and maybe should be built on Flow, and things that worked and things that didn't work. We didn't have a good demonstration of that, and we want to. We want to have like something that we can share with all of you and say, hey, like here's a bunch of the problems we solved, and here's what it looks like in code, so that not everybody has to be kind of figuring out all that stuff and reinventing the same wheel. So we assembled a small team. We said, okay, if we were to build the dApp from scratch right now, how would we build it and what would we do? And that's what Kitty Items was. So we took something that we were familiar with, which is CryptoKitties on Ethereum, and more or less built an extension of CryptoKitties on Flow. But what it is at its core, it's an NFT-based application. It has a storefront, so you can go, a user can log in and see NFTs and purchase them. There's a backend sort of minting area that the admin has access to, so they can mint NFTs and whatnot. And then there's a marketplace component too that we're actually should be updating today. Mac's been doing really great work on that, but it's a peer-to-peer marketplace where users can log in and trade NFTs and all of that. And it's also serving as kind of a proving ground for our developer tooling team. So any tooling updates, whether it's improvements to the CLI or any of our SDKs, or even just like different usage patterns that we think are working better, you'll see them in Kitty Items first. So it's sort of like that'll be where we're trying to concentrate the best practices. I put the link in GitHub. There'll be lots of updates coming, namely that big marketplace update. But what you can do right now is you can deploy it on testnet. You can sign in with Blockto Wallet. You can pretend that you're a user going around, and you can make modifications. We've got the full local development flow coming out, hopefully like first thing next week. So that's building on the Flow emulator, which is basically our equivalent of Ganache for Ethereum. It's just a local version of the chain that runs on your computer and looks like Flow and talks like Flow, but isn't actually doing anything regarding consensus. It's just executing transactions. There's also the sort of the wallet complement to that is the dev wallet. So it's an emulated wallet that connects to the emulator and allows you to sort of test out different user flows without having to kind of fully integrate with a real wallet. Yeah, so that's all coming. Yeah, please check it out. If you have questions about it, come into Discord. Happy to answer them. We're always taking PRs as well if you have suggestions. And yeah, that's Kitty Items.
Thanks, Peter. So just want to make sure everyone understands sort of where we are in space. The things that we're talking about here are all of the different components that you use for building an application on Flow. And so if you came to this wondering how you were going to create your own NFT, these are exactly the steps that you would go through. You'd want to look at those NFT examples in the playground and in Kitty Items to see what those contracts look like. And then there's a lot of services available to help you take that code and test it and turn it into exactly what you want at an application level, and then test it on both testnet and roll it out to mainnet. We also have some questions here around the actual content of that NFT, including video. So how can we give folks more insight on exactly how video works on Flow?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, James.
Cool. So Pinata actually just released a really good, like on their blog, I think they did some Medium posts on this. They kind of like took the quick start guide that we did and sort of set it up and then show you how you can do it with video. They actually use video as it. So in their case, the video is stored on IPFS, and the NFT is storing a hash that you can use to then look that value or the video up on IPFS. A lot of people, the question there is that generally comes up, like, should the data live on chain or should the data live off of chain? So the Flow storage model, it works as a sort of like a deposit on storage. So the current rate right now is 1 flow per megabyte, I believe. So that's a lot for, say, like a 3 meg image or something like that. It's not necessarily that good. Currently it's not a cheap way of storing things. So the way that it works is if you have 10 flow in an account and you then have 1 meg worth of bytes in the account, so that counts as contracts, keys, and resources, which NFTs are resources. If you have 1 meg worth of bytes in the storage, you 10 flow in the account, you have 9 flow available that you can use. So what I would recommend for NFTs is try and figure out ways where that burden of cost for that storage doesn't end up on the user, so they could have thousands of your NFTs, possibly where they're not paying like for 3 meg worth of data per NFT if possible. So some of the ways you could do that, if you really wanted that to be on chain, is you could have your account or a flow account. Doesn't have to necessarily be yours, but it could be a flow account where there are enough flow to cover that storage and have sort of the NFTs being pointers to that data. So Top Shot does that with like player information. So the player information and those stats are all on chain and stored on chain. And the Top Shot moments actually point to them on chain, whereas the actual moments and the data for the video aspect of the moment is in a server somewhere. Like, I don't know the details there, but it's stored off chain. Could be IPFS in the future. Who knows what they're going to do with that? We don't get any say of that.
Is there anybody from Pinata on the call, out of curiosity? Because I just saw that blog post and I was super impressed with like how clearly it explained concepts. Cool. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd recommend it. I'll see if I can get a link for it.
Mac linked it in the chat.
And Mohit just left a comment on the side, and that's exactly right. You nailed it. The important thing is to store the identifier on the blockchain, and sometimes the additional data can live somewhere else that's a little less expensive for the user. All right, next question. How do we deploy to mainnet? What happens when we have a thing and we're ready to ship? And this is me speaking as the question asker. What happens when I have something that I'm ready to ship and I want to throw it on mainnet? Peter, what do I do?
So the first step is, well, I'll start from the start. Typically what we're seeing is people developing locally on the emulator or developing on testnet.
Hi, I actually don't know when I signed up for this or how. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, we're just answering some questions. If you have one, feel free to throw it in the chat. We're just talking about Flow blockchain, where NBA Top Shot currently lives. So if that's where you want to be, then happy to have you. If not, feel free to drop off.
Awesome, thank you. I'm gonna listen in. Thanks.
Sweet, great to have you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So whether you're building directly on the emulator or on testnet, both like all roads lead to mainnet, I guess. So the emulator Access API interface is the same Access API that the mainnet and testnet both provide. And what we're doing is trying to make that road to mainnet as smooth, but also as safe as possible for all of you. And more importantly, for all the users on Flow. And what that means right now is because Flow is a new project, network's growing, and we're learning more about cadence and the security model. We are taking an approach where we're working quite closely with teams to make sure that they're deploying code to mainnet that isn't going to compromise user security in the short term. And also the benefit to all of you there is that we're sort of helping at each team figure out the programming model and the version of their application that works best on Flow. Just because we want the first applications that launch on Flow, the early adopters, and to be kind of demonstrative of like the power of flow, and to really show like what the platform is capable of, and be the best apps they can be. Eventually, like, this is not at all scalable, both practically and philosophically. Like, we can't help every team launch to mainnet. That doesn't work. We don't want to help every team launch to mainnet, because eventually mainnet should be anything anyone in the world can use without any sort of communication with us. But it's early stages, right? So what that looks like practically is we've been working with teams to kind of help them set up a period of testing on testnet where they can simulate kind of real user load, right? And have scenarios where they get an idea of like how people are going to use their app, and they might find bottlenecks or figure out how to use the wallet in different ways, or make adjustments to their transaction model and what they put on chain versus off chain. And once that testing period has kind of been completed, like that, the idea is it like kind of feel comfortable that this is going to be an application that can support a large number of users and has a way to kind of operate sustainably. Then we do a formal smart contract review with our smart contract engineers, and that's kind of like, that's the review process. And right now there is a restriction to deploying on mainnet. Testnet's open season, you can deploy whatever you want. But on mainnet, right now you have to get a co-signature from our flow service account. But basically what that review looks like, it's typically roughly like a 2-week process where you submit your contracts, one of our engineers takes a look, they'll get in touch. It's very interactive. We'll kind of go back and forth and say, hey, like, you might be leaking user funds here, right? That's not good. Or you might have a more efficient storage pattern, right, if you adjust this and that way. And then typically, like, what we're seeing is it's 1-2 iterations maybe, and then we just kind of say, yep, that looks good. You guys get the confidence that your code is going to work. We get the confidence that people on our platform aren't going to lose their money or get. We don't want, like, basically, like, there's growing pains, right? I think we've seen them with Ethereum and other chains where users are the ones that have to pay the price, and we're trying to avoid that. But I will. Oh, Lane already linked to it. Yeah, so on our site we kind of outline the whole dApp deployment process, and happy to answer any questions in detail on Discord about that whole flow. No pun intended.
No kidding. We're getting a lot of questions on this side. So really, yeah, kind of related to that topic, from a philosophical perspective, do you think more control-oriented users might have issues with the NFT being split in that way? From your point of view, you like the idea of a self-contained NFT object or resource, but understand the technical constraints. James thinks a lot about this. James, did you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I mean, do whatever you think is right for your NFT, right? If that's an important aspect of your NFT, do it. But like, you could also like there's amazing NFTs out there already that are just based solely on very small amounts of data. Like, there's the number stuff on Ethereum as example, and the word stuff on Ethereum, which is really cool. But like, if your NFT is gonna cost me like $300 to have, just it locks up $300 worth of flow in my account, I'm probably not particularly, that's probably not what I would go for. So I think the options there, and you will have to figure out what is best for your NFT and your product and the things that you're working on and your goals and what's important to you as a team, and also looking at what's important to your users or who you're expecting to be your users. If it is important that it's all there on chain, wrapped up in the same in the NFT itself, sure. If it's not, there's a lot of ways that you can lower barriers and make things more accessible to people, and not possibly price them out as well of actually getting access to it. So, but that could also be a feature of it, could make it more exclusive. It's a weird world we live in these days. So yeah, do what's best for you and your your users. Do right by yourself and right by your users.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe to just sort of wrap up, we're going to move on to another section of questions, so that sort of our segment on building on Flow and how that works. And the right place to start really is kitty items, the example that was linked there. I think that'll help really pull the question, the different layers of what's needed to build a DApp here together for folks. So really encourage you to take a look at that and to jump in Discord and ask any questions you have. We are always there, and we're always happy to help. And if you are interested in building things that live forever and are digital assets and are owned with a great deal of agency by their user, then Flow is absolutely the place to do that. And we're really happy you're here. And if you are doing that, then there are some developer programs available. So we're going to talk a little bit about the incentives for building on Flow. Yes, James.
Yeah. So Luca actually posted something really interesting there. So he said, or they said, since NFTs are attached to the owner's wallet, can the contract owner still access the NFT that have been sold to keep track of them, or is it something that needs to be manually implemented in the contract with central collection or something like that? So I think in this case, the concept of ownership is really interesting. In Flow, ownership might make you as an app developer kind of uncomfortable, because it's the same sort of ownership that you as a human, when you go and buy a blender, unless it's like not a smart blender, you bring it into your house. There's no way of the company that made the blender knowing that that blender is in your house. And that's kind of a similar concept in Flow. There's almost like an uncomfortableness there for a lot of things in the way that we currently think about digital goods and digital things. So there are ways that, yeah, you can have it so functions on a resource are contract level. So a contract can directly interact with an existing NFT that's out there in the wild, upgrade it, change it, interact with it. You can even do it so contracts that are deployed later on the same account can actually interact with that resource and call certain things if the contract that define the resource is done in that way. These are all like opt-in abilities that can open up an NFT or a resource that are all quite locked down by default in this sort of, but you can open them up sort of programmatically. You will need to implement mechanisms for either looking up or knowing where things are. We've found that emitting events and then keeping track of that stuff off chain generally works better than trying to implement it on chain. You're probably are going to, if you're building an app and you're doing like searches and things like that, it's a thing. One of our developers that actually recently just joined us, who has a fair bit of experience with Solidity, he made a comment that the Solidity contracts felt centralized because of the way that all the addresses and the ownership was in the same contract, and then our actual ownership model felt more decentralized, which was really interesting. And it is, but it also comes with all those problems that decentralized comes with. So we personally think it's a good way to go. Time will tell, but it's like proper uncomfortable ownership for some people. So yeah, hope that answers that.
Really great question. That is so fundamental to why Flow puts at the very center of its design the agency of the user and their authority over the things that they own. And I think that it's that model that allows you to think about people having digital assets and ownership here that resembles something more like their bank account, like a thing that they entirely hold the control of, and that is always theirs to transact on, and that's just central to the design of Cadence and Flow. So yeah, if you're interested in building on Flow, we do have both a product bounty out right now for things that the ecosystem is dying to have that we're funding the development of, and then we also have sort of an ongoing Flow early development program for folks who need some resources to get off the ground. Brian, do you want to share a little bit more about those programs and what's available for folks?
Yeah. Is the product bounty public? I don't know if we posted it yet.
Coming up.
It's coming up.
These are
soon.
our dear friends. You guys hear everything first in office hours.
Early exclusive information here. So we're gonna have a product bounty. It's focused on tools and developer services to make developing on Flow easier. So we'll have a list of that we'll publish with bounty rewards that you can earn in Flow. So yeah, I think I don't know. Peter, do you want to share any?
Yeah, I can talk about.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, product bounties. I call them builder bounties as well. But the idea is that we got a lot of tools to make, and that's actually the wrong way of framing it. There are many tools that would help make it easier to build on Flow, and we don't think it makes sense for the Flow team to build all of them. We think that, like, for example, I'm not a Rust expert. There's somebody out there who would build a much better Rust SDK than anyone on our team, and we see it as a way to really like engage the community in an open source way, and honestly just get like diversity of thought and skills and whatnot, and then build. If we all work together to build these tools, we'll just build better tools, honestly. And then so at the low level, there's like just SDKs, libraries, things like that. There's a lot of talk of like making Flow available in Unity to unlock games, iOS, mobile, places like that. I know there's, I've seen a few people building stuff on Elixir and Ruby, and Yanez is on the call, has been doing stuff in Python. We have like a Go and a JavaScript SDK that are kind of under the Flow umbrella. That's just sort of, those were the languages we started with, but the idea is that like you should be able to build on Flow and from any system or language, or whether it's like your car stereo or a video game console or whatever, right? And then a layer above that, we're kind of calling it frameworks. So it's like, okay, how do we sort of take these tools and put them together into patterns and like define ways of like using things. I kind of think of that as like the React, right? It's like, how do we kind of, the base layer is the core tools. Up above that is like, okay, how do you put the tools together in a way that makes sense? That's kind of the layer that James has been working at with FCL, right? It's like, how do we use the JavaScript SDK, make it so we can talk to a Python SDK through FCL and a wallet and all that stuff. Just kind of spitballing here, like we've talked about having kind of like React libraries where it's kind of a drop-in thing to make Flow available in a React application and things like that. And then the top layer is what we're calling developer services. So some tools are not libraries; they're not software. It's literally just a hosted API that you can connect to. Think of stuff like Reusable for Flow, right? What's the easiest way to deploy an application on Flow? That's like stuff like what Nick from Decentology is working on, right? It's like giving developers APIs they can use to make things easier. It's oracles, it's bridges, it's event archives and sort of access API caching and things like that, where it's more of like actually kind of a developer business, and it's something where we think there's lots of opportunities for people to build sustainable developer-facing businesses on Flow, and we're trying to help them do that. So yeah, stay tuned. Brian and I are kind of putting together the final list, and it'll be evolving, but we'll be posting it, and it's totally fair game for anyone who wants to work.
Yeah. So we're hustling to get that out shortly. So keep your eyes on that. Also, if you're interested in developing, whether it's developer tools that maybe we don't have on the list, but you think are valuable in the community, feel free to reach out to me. We can have a discussion. And we're always open to ideas. So On the second point Lane mentioned, so we do offer a number of ways of supporting you if you're looking to build any sort of application on Flow. So if you're interested in hearing those things, feel free to reach out to me. We'd love to hear what you're building, what you need, how we can help you out. Some of the ways that we have been helping teams so far on the business side, helping with thinking through ideas, sort of matchmaking with developers in the community. We help with marketing. So if you guys have seen, like we helped get the word out with a number of app launches and like the Vive launched a couple days ago that sold out in 7 minutes, which is pretty cool. Check that out if you haven't. On the technical side, so Peter leads our developer experience technical stream. So we help with architecture design and like smart contract reviews and sort of help you get up to speed with cadence and building on Flow. And then beyond that, it's really a conversation. So if you're building something awesome, we want to support you. We want you to be successful. So it's really a conversation and we're happy to see how we can support you.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
In the last 11 minutes here, I'm just going to try and rapid fire through some themes of questions that we're getting. So the first sort of being around the Flow token, what's it used for? How do you stake it? What's up with the airdrop? What's up with Flow in Canada and the US and fees? So Flow is the native token of the ecosystem. It's used for transaction fees. It's used for paying for storage. At least it will be in a couple of weeks when we roll that out. Those fees aren't currently applied to Mainnet because we were prioritizing usability and access first, but we are rolling those out, and that's what the Flow native token is for. That native token is also the asset that is accepted by default in all accounts, so it's by far the easiest way to access all the users in the ecosystem. We have plans to use Flow as the backing asset for a stablecoin, and we'll share more details on that soon. And it also is the core asset for deploying contracts to the network. So if you're deploying or creating anything, you're going to need some Flow tokens, which seems challenging because what the heck's up with Flow not being available in Canada and the US. So we work with a lot of different partners in the ecosystem, and they have regulatory restrictions based on the regions that they're in, and that's a decision that they have to make based on the business sort of risks and requirements of what they're doing. Flow is an open, decentralized ecosystem, and there is Flow circulating in the world, and to get access to that, there's a lot of different forums that can share more information. This is a forum for talking about building on Flow, so there were some links shared on the side there for how to get access to Flow. If you're building specifically, there is a form in the guide to deploying to Mainnet for us to give you some Flow to make sure that you're unblocked and you're able to develop if you're not able to acquire any yourself. So even if it feels like a blocker right now, it certainly won't be in the future. And we have very specific programs in place to make sure that anyone who needs Flow for the purposes of deploying and using the applications and the network and making it available to their users have access to it. So if you're concerned about that, no need to fear. Just follow the instructions on the guide to deploying to Mainnet, and there's a way for you to submit a request to us, and we'll make sure that you have access to some so that you're not blocked. Flow port is the sorry, James, I'm going to keep going because we only have 8 minutes and there's a lot to get through. Staking on one of the things that people often do with their Flow tokens is stake or delegate them. That's the process of taking your tokens and locking them up in the network for the purpose of adding security. It's what makes blockchains possible. It's what makes them secure. Port.onflow.org is where you would go through and do that. If you have any issues with Flowport, feel free to just shoot us a message in Discord. We have full-time support there to make sure that you get the help that you need. And what else was I going to go over? Just the airdrop stuff. So there are tons of folks here who've been in the community for a long time. You, as by virtue of you being here, you were the early adopters of the ecosystem, and we are very committed to making sure that the early adopters of the ecosystem are are compensated for what they contribute to what we're doing here. Our priority right now is to get great things built and to enable that for our users. And so we'll be sharing more details on things like token sharing programs in the future. But for now, the priority really is to build a great ecosystem here and to prove the value and utility of these networks. And so if you see us not answering those questions, it is not from lack of care, but our priority really is making sure that people are building things here of value for users in the long term. And this is not a place to speculate. We have no interest in that. So you will definitely see us prioritizing sharing tokens with folks that are really adding value to the system and to their users. On the topic of prioritizing usage, to address some of the scale questions that we're seeing in the side there, Flow is designed for millions of people. That is what it has been architected for. The network is still very, very young. It's in the earliest stages of its development. And NBA Top Shot is the most successful NFT project that the world of crypto and blockchain has ever seen. So we, as the team that has, we built the full stack over again from blockchain through to the custodial marketplace and payments, credit card onboarding. It's an entirely new stack. Every single thing that you see possible on NBA Top Shot is wholly new. It's something that's been written probably in the last year. And it's just an incredibly complex system that has a lot of moving parts. And so as folks were alluding to on the side, we've certainly seen some challenges doing the drops. So those are absolutely growing pains and we're working through them. The team is making phenomenal progress, orders of magnitude improvements on the performance that we're seeing all the time. And we fully expect that to continue being the case. So we appreciate everyone being with us here for the growing pains, because there are many. But this is absolutely what Flow was designed for, and it's at its earliest stages of optimizations. We haven't even scratched the surface of the performance improvements possible on Flow. What we're seeing right now is an order of magnitude improvement for us to even be able to launch something like NBA Top Shot, and that's only made available by the improvement to the architecture. That doesn't even consider the further optimization. So I think we can all feel very assured that this will be a place where applications can scale, and it's been phenomenal seeing an application so early push up against the bounds of what Flow can do, because it's letting us improve the performance of the system years earlier than we probably would have otherwise.
Yeah, and Lane, if I could, sorry, you were on a roll there, but just wanted to add the issues that you're seeing with like the delays of the pack drops and things like that. Those are like bots, and that's due to 200,000 people concurrently hitting our front end. So it's not an issue at the protocol layer. Just want to point that out.
Yeah, the packs are actually off chain. So like all the pack purchases, all those things aren't us at all. Yeah.
Indeed. And then in terms of upcoming projects, there's lots of questions about UFC. There's no public date for that yet, but y'all will be the first to know when there is. If any of the projects that you are seeing come to light in the ecosystem are ones that are really exciting for you, I really encourage you to submit, and it's something that you want to work on full time. Like if you want to be a part of the core team, you don't just want to build in the ecosystem. There's a general application on dapperlabs.com, and that is we really encourage folks to reach out, even if there isn't a job posting for projects that we'll see coming up soon. We're really excited to talk to folks that want to bring those projects to light. So it's never too soon to ask, and definitely encourage you to do that if you're excited about what you're seeing come to life. Will CryptoKitties be migrated to Flow is a question that we get all the time. CryptoKitties will absolutely have a home on Flow. There isn't a timeline set for that yet, but we're very committed to helping the CryptoKitties community bridge their experience of what they've had on Ethereum over to Flow. Do you want to jump in? I'm hearing it unmute. Nope.
Oh, I was just gonna say any CryptoKitties drops probably come after CryptoKitties is on Flow, and be hard to do it before then. And there's no timeline on when that will be. It is planned, but there's no timeline yet. We've been busy doing other stuff.
Indeed. And there were a couple architecture questions that were really thoughtful that came in, including how Spox worked. We're going to set up a different, another set, like an office hours specifically for going through the protocol architecture, because there's a lot of interest in it, but it's just way more than we can cover in this session. So if you're interested in that, we'll make sure that we make it clear the next time we have an office hours that will directly address the protocol and architecture questions if you're interested in that. Apologies, we couldn't get to it today. It's really great to have you all here and great to have so many questions, but an hour is, as it turns out, not very long to go through an entire ecosystem and an entire stack.
Oh, sorry, Lee.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say on that note, the best part about being on this project is talking to all of you. And I wish this session was more interactive. We are, I want to have a chance to talk to and hear and have this be a conversation. So we're looking at, I think we can all agree that having 60 people ask questions in 1 hour isn't feasible. We're talk about scalability, right? So we're looking at having kind of like, focused like smaller sessions around like individual topics, whether that's like talking about Go or events or whatever. So yeah, you just stay tuned for a new format. We'll kind of be looking at the questions you all have and then forming focus groups on that and probably scheduling individual sessions. And then like Lane said, like pulling in people who are working on scalability and working on the protocol code itself to come in and kind of like talk about cadence optimizations and collections and honestly anything. So yeah, I hope all to say is I hope to hear more of your voices next time.
Yeah, there are definitely formal plans for breakout groups, so we're going to make that happen. The last thing that we'll say on this is just that it is absolutely incredible to see all of you here. You are definitionally building the future just by being present and asking these hard questions. So thank you for being a part of helping blockchain cross the chasm with us. We're really excited to have you here. Please don't be strangers in Discord. No one is. There's no such thing as not being technical enough. Everyone is learning this for the first time, and please don't feel like this isn't a place that's accessible for you. Come ask all your questions. We're really happy to have you, and hope to see all of you there. Thank you so much for the time. Great to see you all. Have a great day.
Have a great weekend, everybody. See you later.